My parents, from the day I was born, they never put limitations on me. About 12 years ago, I started doing races with another team, and Dad kind of saw how much over time that I really loved it, and so he asked my sister if they wanted to do a race with me, and Team Agar was born ever since then.
Yeah, he did a triathlon with a neighbor of ours who was a really good Ironman athlete, and two other guys.
Jeff and Annie both decided that, if we train for this triathlon, we'll be able to push and pull Johnny in the next triathlon, which would be that following year. And so they did that, and that's kind of how the whole thing began.
We always say Team Agar's the family, and it's, my aunt and uncle that help out, and his coaches as well. And so we are the support team. We do the transition from the swim to the bike, and then from the bike to the run. And it's, a big part to keep the timing down on that too, and to make sure, they have water and they have food and the nutrition they need to be ready on race day.
One day he just woke up in the morning and he told us at the breakfast table, I said, what if I learned how to walk and I did the last mile of a race that you push and pull me in? And we said, absolutely. And then Jeff and I went aside and we're like, how many steps are in a mile? Because he's only walked 23, and so it was a big goal for him to have, but there was no way we were gonna say no to him.
The motto of Ironman is anything is possible. And you sit there and think, is really anything possible? Well, if you would have said that Johnny could do what he does, you would have said there's no way. When he first said he wanted to walk in a race, to walk a mile, he'd only walk 20 steps. And for him to walk a mile is like most typical people running a marathon.
He trained, and he ended up walking the last mile in our parish 5K race. I take a lot of pictures, and so I was gonna capture it on picture, and I couldn't see because it was over the hill. And somebody came running up to me and said, you have to get over the hill and see what's happening. And so I did, and I just was a bawling mess because people had gathered behind Johnny, and there were like 200 people behind him. And when he'd walk several steps, they'd walk with him, and they were cheering him every step of the way. They had made signs for him. It was absolutely an amazing scene to see. Kind of all love had pooled together right at that moment. There's so much that goes into Johnny walking. He has to think about every move he makes. With us, it's just a normal thing, even just me talking and moving my hands. But with Johnny, he has to think about his balance, where his feet are placed, his breathing, keeping his head up so his body stays straight.
On his own, he just can't walk, right? But with the right tools in place, suddenly now, you talk about a major transformation. Now he could actually feel what it was like to be an athlete.
And it's all because of Rip.
Yeah, it would not have happened, had he not had the access to those kind of tools.
I was really, really hesitant walking at first because a lot of the walkers that I used were just hard for me to use. Once I found Rifton, it was like a match made in heaven. I think I opened up new doors for myself and really found what I could do.
I think it's been a really cool thing to see, and I always associate, that tool, that walker being the thing that has helped him through races and kind of been his, his running shoes to kind of help him get to the finish lines.
The doctors told my parents that I would probably never be able to walk, talk, or do a lot of things, but there was one piece of advice that the doctors gave my parents that they really held on to, and that was the fact, you could treat him as a person with cerebral palsy, or you could just treat him as your son.
So of course, when they said Johnny has cerebral palsy, Jeff and I both said, well, tell us what we need to do, what books do we need to read, what is it that we need to do? And he told us at the time, he said, you have a choice. He said, you can either, read all the books, and he said, I'll be glad to give you all the books that are great on cerebral palsy, or he said, you can just love them as your son. And he said, I found that the parents who decide to just love them and take it day by day don't put any stipulations on their kids. And so we chose to do that.
Every activity we did, whether it was ice skating, and if you ever seen a kid who can barely walk on slippery ice, it's probably not all that pretty. They also made me available for certain chores around the house that I could do on my own, which was not my favorite, but it helped me and taught me a lot of lessons.
It was difficult because we'd have therapists come in and and say, well, you're in denial. You have to realize that Johnny has cerebral palsy, and we kind of laughed at that later because we think, gosh, there's no way we could not know that he had cerebral palsy. We see every day his struggle, right? But I think it was just a different mindset that people weren't used to, and so it ended up being the biggest gift for Johnny because we didn't put limitations on him. We expected him to do chores around the house. And I remember my daughter Annie had come up to me one day and said, well, Johnny doesn't have to do chores because he can't really do anything. And 5 minutes later, I had the scooter board on the floor, his belly was on it, and he was washing my floor.
They just really wanted me to experience everything that other kids experience and really not put limitations on myself. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to walk with my walker in races.
From that standpoint, I think we treated him a lot the same, but he, in return, taught us an awful lot. I mean, we have been very blessed to have him in our lives because he has taught me more than I could ever teach him, ever in a lifetime. And I think he's put priorities in order for us. I think we realize, what's important and what's truly special about living.
For Johnny, he's not able to play sports, obviously. It takes a second for it to sink in and kind of shows you're really blessed to have the things you have, and it's always been hard because you want him out on the field with you and everything. And of course he still is. He was, a long time ago, he was assistant coach to my dad. But it just shows you that you have it really lucky in life. And it's definitely a really hard impact to know that he can't do that, but in the end he still supports us. So I mean, that's just an amazing gift.
I always say he has such a positive attitude that it makes you realize, what do you have to complain about, really? Because he's, struggling every day with basic things like feeding himself, getting out of bed, and has a smile on his face every morning. And so for us, if we have a bad day, we come home, we see Johnny, we're like, was it really that bad of a day? Because we can walk, we could eat food on our own. So he really puts things in perspective and, brings us humor to the family that it just is really refreshing because, he's struggling through things, but he can still find time to laugh about it. And it really shows us, to be positive and have this energy that he brings. I mean, there's no disconnect between us. I mean, we played sports, he didn't, but he was right there every step of the way. So
it's just like he's not disabled at all to us.
Yeah.
At all. So.
They both have to work quite hard to be able to do the distance races that they do. Jeff his typical day, he wakes up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and then he'll do some kind of work. Then he comes home, he gets a quick smoothie, then he goes to work for 8, 9, 10 hours. And then he'll come home and then he'll do something else. It's pretty much consumes his whole life. And, nutrition-wise, he watches what he eats constantly so that he can have the strength and the endurance to be able to pull and push Johnny through the race. And then with Johnny, Johnny works out. We like to get him walking every other day. And then stretch every day. I used to walk with him, but it's really hard for me because I'm a mom. I just don't like to see him struggle all that much. And so when he starts panting or something, I'll say, okay, Ray, stop, which is not conducive to training. Johnny's aunt and uncle stepped in and they walk with him.
Aunt Janet is actually my occupational therapist, so she works a lot on my training with my walking and certain things.
So we train some together, but because of the amount of time it takes to do it, then we spend a lot of time training alone. So I swim in the pool a lot, and then biking a lot. I'll carry weights around. It's not always the safest to be on the road with him. So I'll put a bunch of water jugs in on the back of the bike.
We call it Water Jug Johnny.
Water Jug Johnny, yeah, really. The Johnny's has a little bit better personality than the water jugs, but sometimes you want it quiet, so the water jugs are nice. But
thing is, when I talk too much during the race, and Dad tells me to stop talking.
Yeah, so I just gotta say, Johnny, I need a break for a while. I gotta get in the zone here a little bit, and so think your own thoughts for a little while. Because Johnny is a really vocal, and he encourages people, which they love.
How are you? Good, good. Rocking and rolling.
You know, he really does a great job of encouraging people, and that's part of his, you know, what he's doing for our team is being encouraging and creating some energy, getting other people excited. Because when he says something to somebody, they'll talk back and have a discussion with us about things. So it really helps to get you through, 8 hours of biking. Because the toughest thing is to do the training. Once you're in the middle of the race, it's something where you're just kind of doing it. But to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and hit the pool, or after a long day's work, get on the a run course and do a long run, or on the weekends do a long run. You have to have a reason. It's very hard just to be self-motivated and have, just for yourself, to selfishly do it. When you have someone else to do it for, that's a big motivator. So we've run into so many people that have done way more than ever could have done on their own because they were inspired by John. How many of these have you done? Oh, congratulations.
Awesome, congratulations to you.
It's amazing how many people we've heard from that never would have done a race before. We just ran into somebody 2 weeks ago who said, I'm only doing this race because I saw you walking in a video. And so now I'm thinking I can do a race like this if you can walk when you're not even able to, right? So it's those kind of amazing things happen all the time. So.
You're my inspiration. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I have many friends that can't speak as well, and so with me giving my voice to people that can't necessarily express themselves, that's really why I walk with my walker, and just to tell people, that you can do a lot of things that if people tell you can't. People say that things are impossible, but as long as you put the hard work, anything is possible for you. So I don't sell myself short or sell other people short. I think, we're all capable of doing what we dream of.